Queen Street United Methodist Church in Kinston, North Carolina. Welcome to our Wesley Bible study. We're starting the book of Numbers, and I'm going to give a brief overview and then kind of a synopsis of the first couple of chapters. We don't have a whole lot of time left. We've had a big discussion on what's going on in Israel. But going back to the book of Numbers, and I have a confession to make. All through my school years, I was not good with numbers. So, but the book of Numbers is actually an earlier book than Exodus and Leviticus. It was written during the time when Israel itself was settled. It was written primarily during the pre-diaspora, Babylonian captivity. So the book of Numbers was set up while Israel was a relatively stable state, and the nation was a whole. Okay, the book was primarily written by the priestly class. So what you have here is a priestly orientation on Israeli history, and there were other editors along the way, some of them later, but because of that, parts of the book of Numbers are a little bit like scrambled eggs. You have to understand also that the standards for writing history back then were not the same standards that are used for writing history now. History was written to make a point. It wasn't written to catalog or describe, or simply describe events that happened. So it was made to be there's a point that they're trying to get across, and it doesn't matter if what they're saying actually happened the way they said it, or that the numbers coincide with the actual numbers of people. The census that we're going to be talking about is a census that you might have for a nation that was well settled and had been settled for quite a few years. But as far as putting this number of people on the march in the wilderness, no, there's no way. So just wanted you to get kind of a background. It's a combination of historical events, some of them interesting, some of them even humorous. It's a combination of history and also ritual. One of the problems also in the description of ritual is that nobody describes, they describe what the ritual is, but they don't describe where the ritual came from or why it was being performed the way it was. So we have no context for what the function of the ritual was, except when it comes to certain sacrifices or adjudication of law or things like that. So, if they're going to light the candles at a certain time of day, we don't know why that time of day was picked, or, whatever. Who was lighting the candles? Who carried what? All of that is, why did they pick them to carry the tents? Why did they pick them to carry the ark or something like that? So you just, those kinds of things are not explained. The reason why there is a description of the division of labor, but not a description of why the labor was divided that way.
Maybe because the people already knew that.
They
didn't need to write it down, and they didn't know they were writing it down for us to read thousands of years later.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. They
didn't have fact checkers.
They did not have fact checkers, and they did not have phony fact checkers.
Right. They didn't have any of that.
Right. So as far as the phony fact checkers, they've got me. Okay. All right. So the book starts out in an exciting census. Okay. So the first thing that Numbers does is numbers. Okay. So this is history by the numbers. And the Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness in the tent of meeting on the first day of the second month of the second year after they had come out of the land of Egypt, saying, now understand, here's 2 years out and they're in the wilderness. Okay, they're not even close to the promised land. Take a census of the whole congregation of Israel in their clans by ancestral houses according to the number of names, every male individually from 20 years old and up, everyone in Israel able to go to war. You and Aaron shall enroll them company by company. A man from each tribe shall be with you, each man the head of his ancestral house. And it goes through a list of who's going to do the census of their respective tribes. Okay. And then they say, okay, now that's how we're going to do the census. And then they do the census. And they come up with some huge numbers. Okay. Like, for instance, the tribe of Reuben was 46,500. Okay. So.
Maybe 46,000 didn't mean the same thing then that it does now.
Well, I sure hope it does, because I would want it not to mean the same thing. Okay, now, okay, just to give you a sense of perspective on this. This is total number, 603,550. I guess they rounded up.
Like round numbers.
Yeah, okay, so that's their census. Okay, when they talk about 603,000, everybody that we brought for Desert Storm was 500,000 troops. And the logistics involved in taking care of 500,000 troops was immense. It was beyond belief. It's a miracle of modern history that we could get all of those people and those. It took years for them to do that sort of thing in World War II. We did it in a matter of a month to bring in that many people. Okay, so it's just remarkable, and to bring in all the ammunition, all the bread, all the everything that we had to have. Tentage, vehicles, fuel, da-da-da-da. It's just, what this country can do is incredibly massive, but that was just for 500,000, not this many. Okay, and here you have over 600,000 people living in tents. Let's just take, for instance, we took the population of Greenville and Kinston and evacuated them to the desert. And then we tell them to move around. Okay? Ain't happening.
But this didn't include women, did it?
No, it didn't include the women. Or the children. Didn't include the women or the children. You know? And this was a draft, by the way. This whole census is nothing but a draft. So everybody understood that as a draft. And these are the people who can go to war and who will. So, you know, as far as that goes, it's...
Inflated or made
Huh?
up?
What?
The numbers of people were inflated or made up?
They were inflated or made up, or they were more consistent with the population of Israel when it was settled. Okay? But even then, I think this is a huge inflation of population for even the settlement of Israel. It's just massive. And when you understand also that this is a society that is 100% dependent on agriculture, and how many people had to be engaged in agriculture in order to support that kind of population, you know, it's just...
Yeah, but they didn't think they were gonna be there that long enough to plant crops and all of that.
No, they weren't planting crops. How do you support them?
But they still had to eat.
Yeah, they still had to eat.
Because they had manna. They had manna. Well, and manna.
Well, in numbers, not yet. Okay,
They're starving in numbers.
right. Now, who's exempt from the census? The Levites. Okay, the Levites are a special class. They're designated as the ones who will take care of the tabernacle and the tent of meeting. And the Levites are to set up a protective perimeter around the temple or the tabernacle and the tent of meeting. And if anybody approaches who is not a Levite, they kill them. Okay? So when you're talking about a protected class of clergy, this is, it's hard to imagine, you know, within their own culture, these people are being denied free access to faith except by permission of this tribe of Levites. The Levites are not there for the common defense. The Levites are there for defense of the temple grounds and the tent of meeting only. Okay, so they are.
And they're not there to intercede to God for them?
Yeah, they do. They do. But they do the work of it. Huh?
But on their timeline.
Yeah, very rigid, very rigid.
Are there women and children that they marry?
Yes. Yeah, the women don't do any of the temple stuff, but, you know, they have to support, the Levites don't do agriculture. They don't raise herds and flocks. They are completely supported.
They're given everything.
They are given everything, yes. It's something like, what? The government.
Something like that.
They're a protected class.
Do the
Okay.
Levites marry? Or
Yes.
They do marry.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Marriage is, at every level of Judaism, marriage is encouraged in Judea, always. Okay. It would be, in fact, it's unthinkable that you would have a rabbi that wasn't married.
Well, in Gaza, right, aren't there several million that lived in Gaza,
Yes,
in that little strip?
in that little strip. Yeah, 2 million in Gaza. One of the most densely populated areas of the world.
Israel's what, about 7 million?
I think it is, yes. About 7 million altogether. So, okay, and what they've done, what they do in here is they array all of the tribes around the central tabernacle and the tent of meeting. And each tribe has its own position so that the tent of meeting and the tabernacle face east. And so there's one tribe that's guarding the entrance area in the east, and then there's one in the north, and one in the, you know, but all 11 tribes circle that area, and it's a defensive camp. And the thing that I find interesting is that their tents are supposed to face the tabernacle, whereas, you know, if you're there for a defense, you really want to be looking out the other way. But I remember in Desert Storm, I was uniquely blessed in that I was able to snag for myself and my unit desert camouflage nets, okay? And the 82nd Airborne was sent out preemptively, and they were not supplied with desert camouflage nets. And we set up the brigade headquarters in the desert during the attack. And the brigade, it was like circle the wagon. You know, you had the brigade headquarters, and then you had different companies that were arrayed around the brigade headquarters. And so my unit was put on the perimeter. Well, the 82nd Airborne didn't have desert camouflage nets. They had woodland camouflage nets. So I was approaching the encampment at dusk, and looking at it at dusk, it looked like a circular grove of trees. Okay? And it also looked like there was like an entranceway, a gap in that circle of trees. Okay? Guess what the gap was?
Camouflage.
Me with the desert camouflage. So you couldn't see me, but you could see all the others. So if you're going to attack, guess where you're going to come through? Anyway, but this encampment is arrayed like that. We're going to pick it up at chapter 2 next time, and it's an enhancement in chapter 2 of the order of march, and you know, who carries what and that sort of thing. But basically, the first 3 chapters are job descriptions and order of battle and order of march. That's basically what the first 3 chapters are all about. And they start to get into some very specific guidelines for what Levites are supposed to do. And because within the Levites, there are divisions. There are families in the Levites, and each family group has a specific task to do in support of the government and in support of the tabernacle. So I hope this doesn't get too mundane, but it's what you see is that these people are arranging themselves in a military way. Okay, this whole thing is a military exercise. And if you're going to invade another country, you better be arrayed in a military style organization. And so that's what this whole thing is. It's a military organization, and each one with a different function, each one for a specific part of the defense, so, or the attack. So anyway, we'll get into that later, but thank you for being with us, and hopefully we'll have some more. I apologize that last week I wasn't able to upload the lesson. I'm going to go back in and see if I can rectify that somehow. But God bless you, and thanks for joining us today.
At some point,